Okay, so the plot thickens. So you start out with Donald Trump in 2020 trying to ban TikTok by executive order. He is stopped by a judge by 2024. There's a bipartisan consensus to follow Trump's old policy. They pass an act to force it to divest or shut down. This is March 2024. By this time, after meeting with Jeff Yass, a big donor who has an enormous investment in ByteDance, the parent company of TikTok, Trump suddenly changes his mind and becomes a big advocate for solving the TikTok problem. As if that wasn't bad enough, that the Republicans supporting this bill lost Trump, they all started getting nervous by huge public backlash, including particularly backlash from the young, all going to, if your issue is national security, an even more problematic app that is literally based in China, a true Chinese app that was also making a lot of young Americans cynophiliac, if anything, and seeing a window into the world of China, feeling that actually America is not what they were told it was, and neither is China, and not to America's favor. So this guy really, really has the spirit of China in his heart. This is pretty typical of, I think, what made the politicians start to backpedal. So you can see this labeled, "I'm ready for Red Note."
我们之相注定是三生，哭以来用笑去走不呀，朋友啊。
It's good.
Yeah, it's good.
He should have sang at the third-party candidate debate.
That's pretty good, man. That's pretty.
Yeah.
All right, so that might be what made Chucky the Shoom, as our friend Jimmy calls him, make this groveling speech, kind of disowning and backpedaling from a bill that he, along with most of his fellow Democrats, voted for.
Say a few words about protecting TikTok's future while also protecting America's national security at the same time. It's clear that more time is needed to find an American buyer and not disrupt the lives and livelihoods of millions of Americans, of so many influencers who have built up a good network of followers. That's why last night, Senate Democrats tried to pass a bill that will extend the deadline to give everyone more time to come up with a workable solution. But Senate Republicans blocked our bill, which is stunning because time is running short.
Just have a pause, Greg, quickly. It's good to put your hands in your pockets when you're talking about an existential economic issue. Nothing tells the people you give a shit more like just putting your hands in your pockets and reading the script. Yeah,
he's playing a little pocket pool there.
His hands in his pockets. Yeah, talking about an existential issue for millions of Americans.
At his age, the erections are few and far between. He has to
yeah.
He has to get his hands in there while he can.
We will continue to work to find a responsible solution to keeping TikTok going, protect American livelihoods, and protect against Chinese Communist Party surveillance. We must and can do all three. I have made my views clear to the current administration, and I will work with the Trump administration and with both parties to keep TikTok alive while protecting our national security.
You're such a fantastic moron.
All right, so why did you vote to pass this bill? If you felt that this is the way that it should be handled, if you felt there was so much nuance to this situation and you understood that millions of people depended on it for a livelihood, why did you vote for the bill? Now, someone who didn't vote for the bill, we must say, was AOC. Not that we heard anything from her in the past year before the tide turned against it.
Hey, she was working tirelessly to prevent a TikTok ban. this whole year. She was working tirelessly.
Behind the scenes.
Yes.
Behind the scenes. This is Sidney Johnson, who apparently is a little surprising. I mean, nobody cares who AOC's comms director is, apparently, because this didn't get a lot of views. But I guess she felt like this was good for her boss's image. So we're not going to play all four, but we'll play a couple of the most relevant ones. So this is how it starts.
I want to talk a little bit about this TikTok ban, which I voted against, by the way, since this is coming up soon. Last year, when they brought this ban up for a vote, number one, they said it's a national security issue, it's a national security issue. I said, okay, that's serious. Let's see the case. Let's see the intelligence. Let's see what's going on. I can tell you that what was presented to all of the members voting on this thing was not very compelling. Like, there was no real information that was given that was a smoking gun, that was anything specific. It was very vague, not convincing, and frankly, it was not convincing to many other members as well.
Okay. All right. And she goes on in the next part, not the part we're going to show, but she goes on to talk about how she had members coming to her saying, this is really strange. There's no real evidence here for what they're claiming. Okay. I think that's all probably true, and it's great that you voted against it, but why did you not release these videos almost a year ago now?
Right.
Why didn't you give a speech like this a year ago? I mean, it's one thing to quietly vote no. It's another thing to draw attention to the problem. It's very easy to draw attention to it now when even Chuck Schumer's going up there backpedaling away from this bill as fast as he can. But
right.
that's AOC for you. But hey, man, I guess she feels safe now to tell the truth about what happened. So it does give us some insight behind the scenes. And here's where I say, hey, maybe a bipartisan bill between AOC and Marjorie Taylor Greene is in the offing. They both go by 3-letter handles,
right.
AOC, MTG.
Yeah, there you
together for the first time in their very own Broadway musical. What she says here is exactly what Marjorie Taylor Greene said almost a year ago when the bill was being debated.
Additionally, the degree to which corporations surveil the American people without genuine consent and without real mechanisms for opting out should be illegal, point blank, period. And so many of us naturally said, the answer is not just playing endless whack-a-mole with apps. The answer is that we should have real privacy legislation in the United States, and we should help people own their information and have greater agency over their personal information so that they're not being spied on all the time, whether it's a domestic company or a foreign company. So we need to actually have privacy laws in the United States, to which, of course, big tech is going to fight against, and their lobbies are going to fight against. So they just target an app instead of targeting the problem.
All right. So AOC with all the face drama. But hey, she's right. And that's basically what Marjorie Taylor Greene said, that we should have a law banning all of the data gathering, not just directed at TikTok. All of it should just be banned. And of course, she's right there. She also points out that some of them are saying, well, they had the opportunity to divest. When you're talking about a company this enormous, giving the company, 280 days, I think they gave them, it's ridiculous to expect a company that size, of that value, to just find a buyer in a few months like that. That's a very big, complicated deal. And she's right, but, she's kind of jumping out in front of the parade, as these courageous politicians tend to do. So Savvy here calls her out on that. AOC says there was no real information given about the TikTok ban. 1, this means Congress voted on a bill they supposedly didn't understand. 2, Here's the public info that was provided. The ADL wanted to shut it down. 3, Biden signed the bill. Yeah, well, she's not releasing that video, Savvy. And she continues, don't forget, in April, Biden signed the law to ban it. Our Congress is not incompetent. They are corrupt. They gave into pressure from the ADL. Corporate media and indie media has been discussing the ban for months. How the hell would they not know about it? Here, Savvy. And here's Blakely, LLC, funny person on TikTok is her main gig, right? Isn't she mainly on TikTok?
I believe so. I mean, I don't spend much time on TikTok, but I believe that is her main.
Yeah, she's
gig,
pretty
yeah.
funny. Oh, look, it's Johnny Come Lately now pointing out when it's way too late that she saw no evidence. Why hasn't she been talking about this for months? I'm so tired of these people. Now, this was a response to Savvy. Now, hey, you got a little discussion of this among the left. I hesitate to say indie media, but okay, Riley Gaines. Sad case to me. So here she is pointing this out. This is a big attack from the right. You notice Marjorie Taylor Greene mentioned this when they're making the case about TikTok. They're tying it to this farmland thing. Here's a map showing Chinese-owned farmland conveniently located near 19 U.S. military bases. But yes, please tell me more about how banning TikTok is because we have a government deeply committed to protecting our national security, to which I say,
Donnie, you're out of your element.
This shit is beyond you. I get that the libs have probably made it very difficult for you to pursue your original career plan of being a dentist. They're going to shut you out of polite society, so you had to take refuge in the conservative media verse. But come on, man. I mean, yeah, like that's messed up, man. But you're not qualified to speak on issues like this. Nobody cares what you think about this. Try to figure out a way to make a living that doesn't involve embarrassing yourself. I mean,
2/3 of the country is entirely made up of farmland and military bases. So
how would you avoid
the
them?
reason that you're going to have some
I had
farmland next to military bases.
I had 3 theaters. 2 of them were next to military bases.
Yeah, right.
So Tim Pool smacks down Riley Gaines here. Okay, China running mass media to 170 million people will shatter the minds of our next generation. Owning farmland is also bad. China doing bad things is the point. We are taking action to stop it. One Fed with a clipboard can seize Chinese-owned farmland. I don't think Tim knows how the government works. You cannot seize back the minds of a generation. This is why TikTok is banned in China, and it's why all our other social media is too. All right, the layers of stupid here are worth commenting on. All right, so 170 million people will shatter the minds of our next generation. Now, I agree that social media addiction is a problem. We did a story about it recently. It literally causes brain damage. Doesn't matter if it's Chinese. Is it better if Mark Zuckerberg is shattering the minds of the next generation? When you look at Reels, when you look at any other social media platform, is it substantively better than what you get on American apps? So what's the difference, really? That is Chinese. And what's really interesting is people like Tim are the first people to really criticize China for lack of freedom. But the solution to what you're suggesting here is to do exactly what China has done, which you would presumably critique, to build an internet firewall around the United States. What else would you do if this is your issue, right? You would have to build a firewall. It might have been Tom Cotton, but I don't want to swear to that. was already saying in response to the trend to red note, well, we'll ban that too. Do you see where this goes, Tim? Ultimately, once you open this door, as Marjorie Taylor Greene, who I'm betting you like, said rightly back in March, hey, you're opening Pandora's box. Because once you do this to TikTok, where does it end? It's whack-a-mole. Exactly as she said. You're going to have to start going after all of these foreign apps. You're going to wind up very much having China's internet policy, and with the same rationale that you can't trust foreign powers to have that kind of influence via social media on people in your country. That's why they do it, right? So you would agree with their policy then. The idea that a Fed with a clipboard can just seize Chinese-owned farmland, it's that easy. You just go up with a clipboard. How would you justify seizing private property? We allow foreign investment in the country. We allowed them to buy the farmland. Like, how would you take back that farmland? So the layers of stupid here are pretty profound.
Okay, so here's where, I call bullshit on a lot of the conservatives who are either, championing the TikTok ban or saying, hey, if China owns farmland, why aren't we worried about farmland? They all are forced to sort of humor the anti-China hysteria coming from their party. Because if they don't humor that, then they're really defying one of the, I won't say core tenets of MAGA, but obviously the MAGA base really is committed to viewing China as a pretty threatening adversary. And so they are either supportive of the ban, like Ben Shapiro, or they're doing this sort of whataboutism game. Well, if you're really worried about China, we got to look into these Chinese-owned farms that are near our military base, which is just totally psychotic. And
you know what the queers are doing to the soil?
Yeah, exactly right. And then on the Democrat side, you have a little more flexibility in that way. Like AOC is allowed to say, "Hey, I took seriously the threat of national security, but they showed me no evidence," right? So she has a little more room to operate as opposed to saying it's complete bullshit. There's, of course, no national security threat coming from China on TikTok. I mean, it's just like deranged and psychotic and absurd. Now, the Democrats of the Bush era would be able to say that. That was back when Democrats were able to actually, like, speak out against surveillance and things like that. Not all of them did. Most of them didn't. But you had a handful who would have been in the squad back then if there were such a faction, with the sort of guts to actually just say, this is, of course, nonsense. Nobody's allowed to go that far nowadays, but of course it's fucking nonsense. And to the extent that it's not nonsense, in other words, to the extent that there is some fear that the Chinese are spying on you through TikTok, anybody who's like at all red-pilled about this, anybody who is at all hip to the problems of like surveillance and data collection and monitoring, they fear their own CIA a lot more than they fear the Chinese. Who has a concern about surveillance is more afraid of the Chinese is more afraid of the Chinese government than they are of their own. Nobody. Nobody. Exactly. Of course, your own government is more likely to crack the whip on you than the fucking Chinese. It's ludicrous. It's absurd. It's dismissible out of hand. And MAGA can't say that. And the Democrats can't really say it either, because ultimately to say that would be to, undermine faith in the, national security state, which they invested in so heavily to keep Trump out of office, and how'd that work out? But that's a different story. But the fact is, neither party is really in a position to tell the very simple and honest truth here, which is that, of course, this has 1,000 times more to do with the ADL than it does the CCP or CPC, whatever the proper, depending on your personal persuasion. That's obvious.
Yeah, no, they're completely avoiding that. We'll see later with Mike Johnson. He says, anti-Semitism is spreading on TikTok. You know what, man? TikTok, admittedly, I don't spend a huge amount of time there. We know that he's defining pro-Palestine sentiment as anti-Semitism. Yeah, you got legit David Dukey kind of accounts on X with huge followings. Of course. Is he going to say? And hey, man, I don't think those should be taken off X. Is Mike Johnson going to say anything about those accounts that say Hitler had it right? Exactly. Like I see shit like that on the regular on X. Is he going to say anything about that? So clearly, that's not the issue. And hey, again, Marjorie, you want to see what would be a stunning gesture of bipartisanship, given that they seem to have exactly the same perspective on the solution, would be Marjorie Taylor Greene and AOC co-sponsoring a bill to ban data collection, which is what they both said the solution should be. No one should be able to collect data in the United States.
Yep. Agreed.
Please clap.